Ladies and gentlemen, I am the captain of the anti-arson squad, who's been formed by the large insurance companies and Lloyd's underwriters to look after their interests. Of course, underwriters are peculiar people, you know. In many ways, they're very like undertakers. You can nearly always tell the difference, because an underwriter will always underwrite an undertaking. You'll very rarely get an undertaker to undertake an underwriting unless it's particularly harassing. And of course, it is our job as members of the anti-arson squad to see that the underwriters are not taken in on the undertaking. But if they're taken under on the intake, then because it is so awfully confusing trying to explain to you in this way, I could explain it in quite a simple way. Supposing you take in laundry. I mean, I don't suggest it for a moment, but supposing you do, and you take in this laundry and you're hanging it up in the garden on the line, and suddenly on an impulse you sprinkle it all over with petroleum, and it bursts into flames. And so you have one brother who's an underwriter and another brother who's an undertaker, and you ring up the brother who's the underwriter, and you say, you know, it's the most peculiar thing, that I was hanging up the laundry in the garden this afternoon, and suddenly it burst into flames, of all things, and what are you going to do about it? And so he says, well, I'll be over in a minute, and then your other brother, the undertaker, hearing about the fire, just pops round in the ordinary way of business to see if there's anything doing, and there are the two of them in the garden with the smouldering laundry, and so the one who's the underwriter says, what a peculiar thing, laundry bursting into flames like this, and it's damp, and what a smell of petroleum. I think we'd better send for the captain of the anti-arson squad. And so they send for me, and of course, I'm highly trained in these inquiries. The first thing I say is, why have you been using petroleum? And you say, because I was cleaning the clothes. And so I lay rather a cunning little trap. I say, yes, but if you were cleaning the clothes, what was the necessity to wash them? You say, why shouldn't I? And yes, that rather lets you out, doesn't it? I hadn't thought of that. It's a very cunning defense. Yes, that is. But however, it does show you how often necessary it is to have an expert on the scene of the fire immediately, don't you think, or don't you? Of course, my ancestors have been firefighters for generations. Oh, yes, an ancestor of mine fought the fire of London single-handed. It started in his house, but the greatest fire that I ever fought was the fire at a motor car tire factory. It was a terrific blaze, and when I arrived on the scene of the fire, the flames were licking here and licking there, and crackling as flames do, and I was awfully occupied mending a puncture in the hose some little distance from the fire. And when they discovered that the president of the motor car tire factory was isolated in an office at the top of the building, so the call went off for volunteers. And the chieftain of the fire brigade came up to me and said, oh, have you heard we've been asking for volunteers? And I said, so I understand. And he said, well, we wondered. And so I said, well, I'm frightfully busy, really, mending the puncture in this hose. And he said, well, I could easily do that for you. So I said, well, of course, I've been brought up among hoses, and I totally understand them, and I really think I'd better remain here. So he said, well, I don't want to butt in the least, but we had hoped that you'd volunteer because we lost so many good men in the last fire. So I said, well, if you're really bent on it, of course I will. But I pointed out the apparatus was very old. See, there were very few rungs in the ladder, and of course it is so essential to have rungs in the ladder if you're going to do anything with it, really.